I'm Dr. Stephanie Carnes. I'm the president of ITAP, which is the International Institute for Trauma and Addiction Professionals. Porn addiction is when someone has a relationship with erotic media that they continue to engage in despite adverse consequences.
So yeah, my name's Josh and I've been dealing with porn for 23 years now.
My name's Steven. I've been addicted to porn for about 10 years.
My name is Mark, and I've been addicted to porn for 25 years.
My name's Jameson. I've been addicted to porn for 5 years.
My name is Gary. I've been addicted since middle school, and I'm 40, so it's got to be 20 plus years. When I was in the throes of my addiction, I guess it became an escape.
I have this alternate reality where I can actually be accepted by someone.
Sometimes it's easier not to deal with the real world around me. It's easier just to get absorbed.
You know, I have to escape. I have to go somewhere else.
Just that thrill, seeing that image, you know, seeing either the pornography, the act of sex, or seeing naked images.
That rush of adrenaline of, oh, it's a naked woman, I guess.
In the beginning, people are just curious. Humans are curious creatures, and they're curious as to what's out there on the internet, what they can see, what different types of sex look like, and that's perfectly natural. But for me and for a lot of other people, over time, it's not just curiosity anymore. I came to rely on porn. Instead of facing life and going out and pursuing real relationships, it was easier for me just to find that satisfaction in porn. And over time, as I was disappointed or sad or lonely, the porn became a salve for me. I could turn to it and forget all those bad feelings. And it became a crutch. And it came to the point where eventually I needed it. And that's when it became an addiction for me.
I could stare at a human face, feel something for a moment, and then check out and numb out.
It was right there with me all the time. It didn't require any effort from me, or didn't require me to actually get to know anyone.
It went from, you know, a couple hours here and there at night to every night.
It is a drug. It gets wired in your brain. It's something you want all the time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
You just don't feel like you can ever get out.
I couldn't tell you what my third grade teacher looked like, but I could tell you, I guarantee, a bunch of the different porn stars that I've seen and name them by face, which is a very scary thing.
It rips out everything that's seemingly good and decent, corrupts it, and leaves something less than at its place.
I'm Dr. Donald Hilton, and I'm a neurosurgeon from San Antonio, Texas. We have a thinking brain called the cortex, and that thinking brain processes powerful sexual images. And then those images go down to the more animal reptilian part of the brain, and our brain says, that looks great. Let's do this. Let's have sex. And there's not a human there to have sex with. There's a screen. So they masturbate. The person masturbates because that's as good as it can get. And it powers the brain with desire. And then we have this frontal area, this more judgment control part of our brain. And this nucleus accumbens, this reward area, is in a way sandwiched between desire and control. You have this reward area saying, just do it, it feels great, what's the big deal? Whatever it is that feels good, just do it. Don't think about it.
Just like with alcohol, not everybody that drinks alcohol is going to become an alcoholic. So pornography is no different. You have individuals that recreationally use porn, like you have people that recreationally use alcohol. But just like any drug of abuse, an addict's brain responds differently to a stimulus than a non-addict brain does.
When the reward area is altered, where it doesn't serve its normal purpose and work as well, then that is pathologic. It's a departure from normal.
For example, porn addicts, when they are shown porn videos,
their nucleus accumbens, that reward area, lit up like someone who was addicted to drugs. It's not serving as a reward center that's telling us what to do to enhance our survival. It's suddenly a reward center that's taken control. Instead of being a garnish to motivate us to do things that help us, it becomes a master that dominates us and becomes the main course of life. And we don't even care what happens. Even if it's bad, we just want the reward. That's addiction.
I'm Dr. Doug Weiss. I am the Executive Director of Heart to Heart Counseling Center, which we treat sexual addiction, and the President of the American Association for Sex Addiction Therapy. So I'm gonna give you 6 ways this thing happens. There's the biological sex addict. That's the person who takes their brain and attaches it to pornography, ring the bell, feed the dog, thousands of times. There's the psychological. That's the person who's been abused, abandoned, neglected, and they find their sexuality as a way to medicate their psychological pain. The person who has sexual trauma, they tend to act out exactly in the parallel way of their abuse. Intimacy anorexic sex addict. This is a person who acts out with self or others, but is disconnected at home. They're too busy for their spouse, they blame their spouse, they withhold love, they withhold praise, they're critical, they use anger and silence as a way to control. They're unwilling when able to share their feelings, and sometimes they'll control with money, but the spouse feels like a roommate. And so this is a two-sided monster, which is a whole nother game. The mood disorder sex addict. This is someone who has manic depression, bipolar 1 or 2, or depression, or anxiety, or some kind of actual chemical disturbance in their brain that they're using sex to medicate, and it actually works. And so they become addicted in the process of medicating their chemical imbalance.
Without a doubt, the younger one is, as they're exposed to pornography-related content, usually they're going to struggle with that in adulthood as well.
When we see anything, the image goes through our eyes, transmits through a series of pathways, and is comprehended in the brain.
An addict's brain will see a trigger and it will respond in a very different way than a non-addict brain.
Lust is the hardest battle to fight.
When you look at pornography, you get wired for lust.
The more porn I saw and the deeper I got into porn, I think it changed the lustful thoughts that I had.
Unless you just trap yourself in a cardboard box and close your eyes, sleep all day, you can't get away from lust.
It happens every day for me. A woman walk down the street in spandex or yoga pants or short shorts or something, doesn't matter their age, honestly.
You're imagining what they're like without clothes. You're imagining what it would be like for them to show interest in you, what it would be like for them to experience you and to know you, what it would be like to experience them.
I hold on to that image and I go home and I use that image and I imagine that I get to have sex with her.
It doesn't matter if I'm with my parents, it doesn't matter if I'm with my girlfriend or if I'm with other guys, like it's always there.
Now your lust is pretty much just as if it was a porn on the screen and you're kind of playing it out in your head.
My mind would start racing and yeah, I guess I'm gonna mind rape her. That's wow.
It's this battle of trying not to look, but then you're trying so hard not to look that you're still not present with the person that you're with anyway.
Once you're wired, it's always there. You cannot get rid of it. It is a constant, evil, nagging companion.
I don't feel like I can experience physical intimacy with another person without having lustful thoughts.
Lust isn't a bad thing. It's part of who we are naturally. But feeling lustful in the wrong situations can lead us back into bad behaviors.
For some porn users, the porn will be sort of the gateway, and they'll use a lot of porn, but it will lead to offline behaviors like accessing prostitutes or anonymous hookups, those types of things. One of the things that a lot of addicts struggle with is what we call toxic shame.
Shame is one of the drivers in pornography that's kind of unspoken about. It starts to separate you from other people, and you start believing, I am bad. Not that I did something bad, but that I am bad.
This is really core to who a sex addict is and what they believe about themselves.
When I'm done looking at porn, I feel hollow, honestly.
Dirty, cheap.
Shame and guilt just are at the forefront of my mind, even when I'm not doing it.
A lot of guys build up shame without even realizing it. Shame over being unable to perform during sex, shame over the type of porn that they've come to watch. Some people have shame because of the family environments they grew up in. They were taught that masturbation is wrong.
You know, you hold that burden against yourself 24/7.
A lot of anger, hatred of myself.
People don't get to experience you because you do everything that you possibly can to hide that part of yourself.
There's this fear, it's like, I just don't want to be caught. I mean, they'll never understand.
You put on this facade to try to feel accepted, but you know that they don't really know you, and then that just makes you go back to porn again.
It's such a horrible feeling that they want to escape from it any way they can. And how do addicts escape from things? Well, they turn to their addiction, because in their addiction they can forget about everything.
And when you start believing I am bad, then you start needing medicine. And porn provides more medicine and more shame. More medicine and more shame. More medicine and more shame. And once you conclude I am bad, I am hopeless, pornography has you for as long as you want to stay.
You go back to it because it made you feel good. And at the same time, when you turn it off, well, that good feeling ends up feeling bad.
I don't want to, but I do. I don't want the feeling afterward, but I like the feeling during.
You're afraid of the thrill. You just realize you're going further and further and further in this hole. What is going to be that next thing that just grips my heart?
You know, every time afterwards, all I can do is just shut my computer and just have my head in my hands and just, why again? Why can't I stop myself? Why can't I walk away from this?
Over time, addiction has a very predictable course. It tends to progress, it tends to get worse, you tend to accumulate consequences. And it's typically not until the addict experiences a lot of consequences that they start to really gain insight into the fact that their life is in trouble.
Where do I start?
When my wife found out, the trust level that we had before was always kind of still a little rocky. She just didn't know why I was pushing her away and really wasn't trying to be with her.
It was starting to pull me away from the relationship with her, intimate relationship with her. And it was just like, oh yeah, go to bed, cool. Yeah, good night.
Basically, they have created isolation around themselves. Even if, there is a wife and kids in the house, they are so isolated. And they created this bubble.
I would seek it out and alienate myself from the family, pull away, come up with excuses to not do family functions.
And instead of being able to spend time with my wife and enjoy my wife, I was pushing her away.
We have, in our marriage, a space between us that's always there. It's that space that you'll hear my wife from time to time say that she doesn't feel like she's enough. She doesn't feel like so you can connect.
Pornography does have a really damaging impact on relationships because it creates a real self-centered focus, and relationships, of course, thrive on sharing and service and caring about another person's feelings.
One of the things that's so challenging for partners is they start to make discoveries about the addict's behavior, and it's actually very traumatic for them. It really erodes the trust in the relationship.
The addiction itself isn't as hard, it's the deceit that follows. My husband could lie to my face and I had no idea. The integrity, wasn't there.
And that starts to break down a relationship. It starts to break down closeness and trust.
I mean, without trust, what do you have really as far as intimacy?
It was really hurtful to me to know that he was using porn, because I knew that they were pretty women that he was watching and that he was masturbating to, and therefore he wasn't being affectionate towards me in the way that I needed.
Many women feel that they're being compared to pornography and that they can't possibly compete with that.
Is he thinking about me, or is he thinking about, X, Y, and Z?
I still wanted closeness, and I still wanted to have sex with him, and I still wanted to have attention, and I still wanted to feel pretty, but that took a lot of that away from me, and it made me feel really insecure and unwanted.
It kind of confirmed a lot of my fears, you're not good enough, you're not pretty enough, you're not skinny enough, you're not any enough that you could think of.
What pornography does to the brain is amazing. Neuroscience has come along in the last 20 years and explained what happens during a sexual encounter. We get these endorphins and enkephalins and other brain chemicals that hit the prefrontal cortex of our brain. We get this massive chemical explosion, but we literally attach to whatever that is we're looking at, real or imaginary, and it becomes their preferred sexual connectivity. And they actually have difficulty connecting to real women during sexual encounters without going to the fantasy state.
During intercourse and sex, it would be constantly flooding my brain, and then I'd get sidetracked, and she would actually know when I wasn't focused on her. She could pick up on that in an instant.
So it actually hijacks their sexuality neurologically.
How do you look at your wife when your wife finally wants to have sex and make love with you, and you're just like, okay, it's like it ruins that completely.
Her self-image is degraded every time I look at it. She won't talk to me for some days, a couple hours, sometimes a couple days, depends on how long it was since I last relapsed.
Suppose their wife is with them. They will actually go to a fantasy state to be able to maintain their sexual heightenedness, okay? Because they're attached to the heightened state in the fantasy world.
Intimacy has changed from this emotional and spiritual connection to only this physical connection. Intimacy and physical touch has just become one and the same for me.
Believing that every sexual encounter with my wife, every intimate time with my wife, was gonna be like the porn that I watched.
Those simple things that were prevalent in our early relationship, where she would touch my hand, surprise me with a simple kiss on the cheek, and that would send me into a flutter. My body has become so numb, my mind has become so numb, and my heart's become so numb from the damage associated with it that those things don't trigger.
The fact that I lied to her for the first 5 years of our marriage.
I think it just compounds all the issues. Like any small issue we had, once porn is involved, everything just becomes this big, no matter what it is.
I have a marriage of 12 years, and because of the damage that pornography's caused in my own life, from before we were married through when we were married, just dealing with the damage and the ramifications of my addiction.
I'm never going to be able to be in a healthy relationship ever again, or know what it's like to have, you know, sensual situations and lovemaking with my wife, because it ruined everything. But when I was in the middle of it, I couldn't see.
Another way that porn can escalate is with the mutability of sexual tastes. You will have somebody getting online and initially finding things that are sort of vanilla, so to speak, arousing and exciting. And as they continue in their porn addiction and their porn addiction starts to escalate, they will start looking for more novel, more intense, more graphic stimuli.
You'll see all sorts of extreme pornography, rough sex, rape fantasy, gagging, all sorts of fetishes. And that's because I believe the audience is desensitized. They've been watching porn long enough that the vanilla stuff, the stuff that we got into in the beginning, is just not enough anymore. And they're all looking for something more extreme, more novel.
Goes from, well, I like, you know, blondes, to I like Swedish blonde midgets, you know, 30 to 40 with one leg. You know, I mean, you can have that.
Now I just gotta do one click and boom, there it is. One search word, there it is.
Some of those people who get addicted to online pornography, well, they need more and more stimulation.
They find that they need more extreme content to get aroused and to reach orgasm. And once they reach a certain point, the only way they can do this is by pairing sexual excitement with another strong emotion, like anger or disgust. So they start watching porn that disgusts them or angers them or makes them feel uncomfortable just because it's shocking. It gives them a kick of adrenaline, which pairs with that dopamine and gives them a higher high.
They will start with conventional porn, and slowly but surely they will become addicted to illegal pornography, to child pornography. As soon as they get addicted to child pornography, what I can tell you is that the FBI starts monitoring them.
My name is Jake, and I'm a former sexual crimes against children detective. I'll never forget the first time that I had to look at child pornography. I just had a visceral response to this. I couldn't unsee, and I can't unsee what I saw, and I just had to do it. I felt compelled to work those cases. So there's a lot of fear. I mean, people that I've interviewed have told me that they live in a constant state of fear of that knock at the door, you know, that they expect that they're going to get caught, and they knew it was just a matter of time before they got caught, and that they just couldn't stop. How you doing? Or what? Look good?
See a billboard.
Well, you know, like they want to make sure. No. Yeah.
The attraction to elementary school kids was just the reason I knew I was going to hell, and I couldn't tell anyone. When I got the knock at the door, I was elated. I was in such a low place. I was just so happy to see them, because I finally had people who understood what I was going through. And so when the FBI agent took me into his nice van and interviewed me, I just laid it all out there.
I felt bad for these guys because I knew they were addicts. I knew that they were just struggling and that had progressed. Many of them were sexually abused as children. It's so tragic that they go from being a child and being innocent and being sexually abused and having no control over their environment, their situation, to someday they turn into a perpetrator. They turn into what was their worst nightmare as a child.
From early on, I would just disconnect from reality. Everything just bounced around inside of my head. If these walls could talk. I mean, really all you need is a black light, then you'll see the blood splatter. You know, so I guess that's a way to talk, but don't take a black light in here. You know, because I'm a sex addict, so you can just imagine what else appears at my dick level.
The one common thread that I've seen in all of the people that I've arrested for child pornography is that they all started with mainstream pornography.
We got the internet in the house, and I mean, I would habitually watch porn. I would need to masturbate 3 times a day. I mean, that was from like age 12 and on. I used porn to help me wake up, to help me go to sleep. It was a stress relief. I honestly saw it. It was just like a syringe of like this fucking good feeling fluid that I would just put into me whenever I wanted.
Not everybody that looks at regular pornography progresses to child pornography. People just feel that it's wrong. Most people just understand that it's wrong, just at a gut level. But there's this taboo nature that causes some offenders to continue to search it out. And unfortunately, they can also develop an appetite where there wasn't an appetite previously there.
It was in the dorms during my freshman year of college. It was the first time I saw child pornography. I was scared, I was excited, I was angry. From that very first image, it's like, okay, my life's over, this is it. It was like the most purest form of the drug.
I came across people that had multiple thousands. I mean, one guy had 4 terabytes of pictures and videos, multiple thousands of pictures and videos, all of horrendous child pornography.
So I would just collect it, and then I would masturbate to the images, and then I would feel guilty and I would delete them, and then that began the kind of 4-year-long process of collecting everything and then mass deleting and then collecting and then mass deleting.
They are sex offenders and they are very sick individuals. They are highly narcissistic people, and when I interviewed them, I could really sense that they were taking pride in sharing with me what they had done. What was absolutely chilling was how detached they were when they would tell me about their addiction.
The next step in that addiction for many people is to go out and actually act out on what they've seen, and oftentimes that means breaking the law.
I become an ambassador for this female youth group, a Masonic female youth group. So here I was, in my suit, going to a Masonic lodge, surrounded by girls ages 7 to 18, who all looked up to me and said, "Mr." and my last name. And, you know, I was, and of course, you know, like, I was young, I was unmarried. I'm sure, I know one of them had a crush on me. And I definitely had, I liked the idea that she liked me. It was like masochistic punishment to myself by surrounding myself with these young ladies, just having to sit there with my hands in my pocket as a young, attractive white man in a suit, you know, who these young ladies and their mothers all looked up to, and they loved me. I think the lowest point that I got was I went to an event, and you got to ride the Ferris wheel for free if you wore blue. So I wore my founding father blue sweatshirt. I knew in my head I'm bringing this sweatshirt, not for me, because I'm not going to ride the fucking Ferris wheel. You know, fucking 20-something years old. I'm not going to ride a Ferris wheel. This is going to be for one of the girls. I said, hey, you're not wearing blue. You want to borrow my sweatshirt? Like, here. I gave it to her, and like I didn't wash that sweatshirt afterwards. And I'll admit, like, yeah, her smell was on it for a long time, and that kept me over for a while. I just had it in bed and smelled it, and it was amazing, and just, I don't know,
Interesting study years ago where with rats, they took some rats that were naive sexually, and they exposed these male rats to female rats that were receptive. So the males wanted to have sex with the female rats. But they used cadaverine. So cadaverine has a horrible smell. It's what makes cadaver smell bad. And they took concentrated cadaverine and they put it on these receptive females. So the male, even though normally they run from cadaverine, it's such a bad smell, they couldn't quite run away from this enticement of novel sex. So they would still mate. And then with repeated matings, they came to associate this horrible smell of cadaverine with a receptive female. And then later, after that association was firmly cemented in the brain and wired, they would put a piece of wood permeated with the cadaverine. And the rat would try to eat the wood. It actually liked the cadaverine because of associative learning with sex. So you have men that will start off with adult porn, and they need something new, right? The brain always wants to learn something new. So it'll be younger girls, and it'll be girls that may be 18, but they look younger than 18 because it's something new, something novel. And suddenly, the FBI is breaking the door down, saying, hey, you've got 15, 16-year-olds younger girls on your computer. I didn't know I was looking at child porn, and suddenly they're arrested. I didn't know what happened to me, they'll say. So it's all about novel learning, and it sculpts the age downward.
That 15-year-old girl, I mean, I definitely fantasize about that her mom would just say, hey, I'll give custody over to you. And I mean, this girl just had no idea. I mean, I knew that if I had the money, I could just pick her up, get her a passport, and we would just leave. Yeah, just craziness.
There's more than 2 million children, being sexually exploited, being held as sex slaves. You think about what kind of demand justifies that number.
We've rescued girls as young as 4 years old from the brothels. That a man would use a 4-year-old to satisfy his sick sexual desires. Where does that come from?
There's that many sex addicts that want to have sex with kids. Why? I think the answer to me is as clear as anything. It's pornography.
Do I see pornography as the gateway drug to sex trafficking? Unquestionably, without a doubt.
Every single person, and I've arrested and interrogated dozens and dozens and dozens of pedophiles, child pornographers, child sex tourists, okay? Every time they talk, and most of the time they do talk, surprisingly enough, every time they talk, it's the same story. The sex scenes of adults just wasn't doing it anymore, and they needed something else, and so they turned to anything to get the high they needed.
But what is that doing? Well, it's creating right in here a picture of things that I could do.
What if I watched a 5-year-old child be raped? Maybe I'll get my kick out of that. And they do, and they go and they get that.
You see these things on a flat screen. Well, how much better would it be if that flat screen were real?
And all of a sudden they start acquiring that taste, and they want that.
It's okay to watch it. Well, if it's okay to watch it, why isn't it okay to do it?
And then they start buying child porn, downloading it, and then next thing you know, they're on some remote island off the coast of Cartagena having sex with an 11-year-old girl. Now, am I saying that every porn addict is going to become a pedophile? No, I'm not saying that at all. It might even be the smallest fraction of porn users, but that small fraction of billions still justifies 2 million kids being raped for money every year.
I have never met a girl yet who said, yeah, when I was a little girl, I could hardly wait to grow up and be used by 10, 15 men a day to satisfy their sexual desires. I could hardly wait to be beaten and spit on, urinated on, ejaculated on, and made to feel like trash. I've never met a girl yet that wanted to do that.
I'd rather call it sex slavery. It's when somebody, particularly a child, or even an adult, is forced, coerced into performing sexually for money, being raped for money. This is the fastest growing criminal enterprise on the planet.
Show me something worse. Show me something worse than a 5-year-old forced to have sex with 10 men a day.
I think death is better than this.
We have to get rid of this, or it'll never end. It'll continue to get worse.
I was taken to other places to be used for the sole purpose of commercial sex acts. My parents, they severely abused me as a child, and sexual abuse, physical abuse, and that led into child pornography. Which then after child pornography started, then they started to sell me to men in the community. Most people have no idea or cannot even fathom the behind the scenes. The last time I was trafficked, the woman saw my vulnerabilities. She saw that I had nobody in my life. I was all alone in a new city. I was pretty much homeless. In my situation, she came at me where I was the most vulnerable and took me around where she could use me the most. Because I've experienced both the pornography and the trafficking, I see a great connection. And to me, it's a very circular kind of connection where the pornography aids the trafficking, and the people coming to the buyers of the girls being trafficked or the boys being trafficked have most likely watched pornography that they then want to act out the fantasies of. But then that trafficking also feeds the pornography, because most of the pornography has been done so by individuals who have been in trafficking situations.
What was most appealing about the industry was fame. I wanted to be famous. I wanted to be noticed. I wanted to be somebody. They take you to all these nice restaurants. They introduce you to like famous people, mansions, actors, drugs, parties. This can be your life. This can be your house. These can be your friends. The money and the attention was probably the most attractive. And the fact that I could be somebody else. I didn't know how to be me. And you get to sit in the makeup chair and they turn you into somebody else, and all of a sudden you have all this confidence. I was addicted at a really young age because I remember walking to school in first grade thinking that I wanted to be a porn star when I grew up, because I wanted to feel the way I felt every time those movies came on. My mom thought it was funny to have me watch porn. She said I was made that way, it's normal. It's okay. And that was probably about 6 years old. My neighbors knew that my mom had films. They were in 4th grade, and they would come over and we would act out. We would put one in and act out everything. And there was Polaroids at the time, and we would make the films through Polaroid. They would even set me up with a little boy that was in kindergarten, and I was in 1st grade. I didn't even really have time to develop or figure out what was healthy or what wasn't healthy. So I was like really making pornography and stripping between 1st and 2nd grade. When you're on set, you're talking, you're having to do numerous things to fight infections. You're getting tested every 2 to 3 weeks for diseases. You're being quarantined every so often if there's an HIV exposure. Most of the guys that I worked with took supplements and took shots to even continue to perform anymore. Had I was hospitalized from like second-degree burns. I had my back go out on set, and they, like, instead of stopping it, they just positioned me in a way I couldn't move. Like, my back went out, and they needed to finish the movie, and so I just had to kind of lay there while they finished so that I can make my paycheck. There were times where, like, they would try to set you up with, like, the largest and the most amount of men, especially if, like, you're a little girl. You know, coming in 18, I was 18, I was really blonde and really tiny, and they would, you know, throw as many men as possible, and I would be in so much pain that I would literally cry into my pillow, to the point that some actors had to step away because they couldn't do that to me anymore. Like, you have to become a prop. Like, you are a prop. And then after that, your agent would try to book you with more. It's because they get a certain percentage of the money. So you go to the next scene if you're physically able. There were times that I was not physically able to show up to work because I couldn't. I sold myself, and I had nothing left.
Internet porn is sex delivered in a way that we really haven't seen before.
We're just starting to see what's happening with this first generation that was raised on high-speed internet porn.
I saw that my generation especially, people who had grown up with the internet in their homes, who had experienced internet pornography before real intimacy, that they were changed because of it. Because with pornography, we can see dozens of attractive mates doing anything we want at any time. And that's an unrealistic stimulus.
In fact, porn is what we call a supranormal stimulus. It's a stimulus that's more than what we've encountered before. It's not just pictures on a page. It's endless novelty, enhanced novelty. Available 24/7, 365, and now virtually free.
We're not built to have this level of sexual stimuli and to have so much novelty. We weren't built to have 100 new potential mates at a click of the mouse. So now we have the internet everywhere at the touch of our fingertips, and we're starting to see more and more addiction.
It's available to every 12, 13-year-old boy and girl. So that's changed sex dramatically, to the point where sexual intercourse is now experienced on a screen by virtually every emerging adult and adolescent.
So then we have a typical 11, 12, 13-year-old child who comes across pornography. And so they're instantly receiving a whole nother message.
They're socializing their brain, they're sculpting their reward center to recognize sex as something on a screen.
One of the really important areas in sexuality is a person's arousal template, or what they call their love map, which is all the different things they find erotic or sexually exciting. And the early childhood years are thought to be very formative in terms of somebody's arousal template. So somebody that is exposed to a certain type of pornography or a particular sex act when they're young, that can become a very central part of their arousal template.
Mainstream porn now is just two bodies going at it, no emotional connection. And that sets up a very unhealthy expectation for what sex should be.
Pornography is exclusively genital focused, where that becomes all you care about, all you want, all you think about. You can just keep searching for the ideal looking person, an ideal sex scene, whereas real life is not like that. You have a real person with real needs, and you have to consider that, or the sex doesn't happen. And so a lot of men will turn away from that and turn back to pornography because it's easier and they can get exactly what they want.
Sex isn't real sex until you have anal. It's not really pleasurable until you ejaculate in a woman's face. Those things did not exist. Those were not expectations that were put on teenage girls 15, 20 years ago. now that's being expected in a new relationship.
So it definitely creates false expectations in the bedroom, false expectations of women.
One of the things that we're seeing with our young people that are getting online at 10, 11, 12, and being exposed to very graphic content, that is impacting the formation of their arousal template and what they find arousing, what they will find sexually arousing as they get older.
That undeveloped brain being exposed over and over again to this image of a woman who is not really developed because we have altered her for the camera to look this way, that is what is sexy and attractive. So then we're grooming men, boys, and then as they become into men, that is what is attractive. So then what becomes attractive to them? Underage girls, young girls that are not fully developed, because pubic hair symbolizes that you're a woman, that you're a grown-up. But if we're teaching boys at a young age, no, that's not attractive, that's not sexy. You want this young girl that looks underage, that's going to change things. That's going to change how we're conditioned, what we think is okay, what we think is appropriate, what we think of as normal.
So one of the concerns that we're starting to see with a lot of young porn addicts is an issue called porn-induced erectile dysfunction.
The visual stimulus of a naked woman right in front of them, ready to have sex, just doesn't push through that barrier of the desensitization enough to give them an erection or make them feel physically aroused.
We're starting to see people struggle to get and maintain erections because they have sexually conditioned themselves to respond to endless novelty on a computer screen. And so when they try to transition from having solo sex with the computer to having sex with a real person, it's really hard. And they don't have any sexual response. Even if they think that person is beautiful and they're attracted to them and they're sexy, they have programmed their body to respond to endless clicks and novelty and that intensity of stimulation. And so unfortunately we're starting to see this sort of widespread youthful ED.
Most of us are not being real, and our kids are learning that over and over again, to follow that pattern that many of us as parents are following. I have to show this image to be the cool girl. For adults, to be the good mom, to be the sexy wife. That was not a concern of our parents. But nowadays, I know a lot of sexy moms, and it's a little pathetic. We have so many women who are trying so hard to maintain their youth and stay sexy. You are nobody unless you have objectified yourself in some way. A lot of women are coming to realize over and over again that if they're not fuckable, they're invisible.
We're taught about, the harmful effects of drugs, alcohol, and smoking tobacco. Why were we not told about the harmful effects of pornography? Because that was far more available to us than any of those other things. I mean, it used to be something that you just kind of avoided like the plague. I mean, nobody wanted to talk about it. No news outlet wanted to cover it. It was completely one of those kind of private things that was nuanced with a variety of different opinions and beliefs, and it wasn't something that really had a stage or a platform within kind of the mainstream public dialogue.
My name is Garrett Johnson, and I am riding coast to coast in chains to help build awareness about the harmful effects of pornography. I started my journey in Yorktown, Virginia. I end in San Francisco. It's a total of 3,749 miles. People are really surprised to have these chains out in the open. It brought a lot of conversations about why are you doing this, what do the chains represent, and that gave me an opportunity to talk about the harmful effects of pornography.
My name is Todd Weiler, and I am a state senator for District 23 in Utah. We cannot tolerate the hijacking of our children's brains and adult brains into thinking that pornography is normal. My Senate Concurrent Resolution, or SCR 9, would declare pornography as a public health crisis in the state of Utah. I'm not aware of any other bill like this that's ever been passed in the United States. The reason this is important is the conversation on pornography for most of my adult lifetime has been, it's legal. Well, a lot of things are legal.
This is impacting all of us. It doesn't matter, what your political affiliation is. It doesn't matter what your religious beliefs are, if any. It doesn't matter, what race you are, what cultural background you have, or what gender you are. This is impacting our entire society.
To have this available now and pretend like it's not affecting our society in some meaningful way is just very naive.
Studies and research are now showing that pornography affects not only what we love, how much we love, how we think about those we love, as well as how we even express that love.
What I'm seeing a lot of is people giving up on relationships. We have so much hookup culture. It's so much easier to just get off on a one-night stand, get off with my computer. Why should I spend the time, the days, the hours, the months, the years building and nurturing a beautiful, intimate relationship?
I don't think any relationship can compete with what you can see within 2 or 3 clicks on the internet.
Studies are consistently showing us that the material that people are consuming on a regular basis is increasingly more aggressive and violent. This is the material that young kids, as young as 8 and 9 and 10 years old, are consuming. And they have no context as to what is healthy. They have no context as to what is okay and what is normal.
People need to know what sex is. They need good sex education growing up. They need to know what a healthy relationship looks like and what safe sex looks like and what healthy online habits look like so that they can make their own informed choices.
We've got to start talking to our kids about healthy intimacy. We need to model healthy relationships. We need to talk about how amazing and good sex is, that it really is an intimate act between 2 people. We need to talk about the opposite of pornography. The opposite of pornography is true intimacy. Loving, kissing, hand-holding, touching each other, caressing each other. These are not things that are displayed in pornography, so we have to talk about it, and not just one time. The day of the one sex talk is gone.
This is not a one-time dialogue and discussion. This isn't a one-time birds and the bees conversation. Those days are long gone. This is an ongoing, layered conversation that starts sooner than you think and on into their adulthood.
If we want our kids to believe that sex is special and amazing, we have to talk about it as such. We need to be positive with them, and we need to let them know that they can come and ask us questions, that there is a way to find out answers, and that online porn is not the way to get those answers. You're empowering them with information. You are not stealing their innocence. You are merely giving them the facts that prepare them for the world around them.
One of our favorite quotes is from Socrates, and he said that the secret to change is to focus all of your energy not on fighting the old, but on building the new. And so it's not about saying what not to do. It's not saying porn's bad, or porn's harmful, or porn's, unhealthy. It's not just about sending those messages. We do need to kind of understand that as a culture, for sure.
One of the things that's really challenging with sex and porn addiction is that it's still not very accepted. It's still not in the DSM-5, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for Mental Disorders. And so there's still a lot of controversy around what are we going to call this problem, and how are we going to treat it.
It's such a taboo subject. And no one wants to talk about this. No one wants to talk about, what it does to you and how it sucks you in and how difficult that is.
It's just a visual addiction. So how do you get rehab from visual addiction when, I don't know, how do you do it? You can separate yourself from that, but one trigger is gonna open it back up again.
I didn't just wake up and say, okay, I'm free from porn. I still have, fears, and I'm still learning how to relate relationally and unselfishly.
Initially, when an addict gets into recovery, many therapists do recommend a period of what they call celibacy or complete sexual abstinence. The idea behind that is that it's a period of time where the brain can cool down and the addict has feelings come up and they're not medicating sexually.
A lot of guys may encounter what we call the flat line, which is a period of feeling a lack of libido, feeling like your penis is shriveled up and you'll never feel an erection again. And a lot of guys during this time, they feel like, oh, well, I need to feel something. I need to feel some sexual arousal. So out of desperation, they'll turn to porn to see if they still are a sexual being, and they relapse.
Relapse is almost easier than recovery. And so you relapse, but then the shame comes in again, and every time you feel worse, the escape of porn just seems like a better option.
If we learn from our relapses, they don't have to be a failure. The only failure is failing to learn from a negative experience.
Recovery from sex addiction is more like recovery from an eating disorder. You have to learn how to have a healthy relationship with food, just like you have to learn how to have a healthy relationship with sex. This illness is very treatable, and there's so much stigma around it, so much misunderstanding about it, that people don't know how to approach it, and they think that it's hopeless. People are recovering beautifully and living very long, healthy lives, and marriages are being saved. So just like other addictions, this is very treatable, and people struggling should have hope and know that they can get through this.
This world, yeah, well, this time I promise to not be led astray. Please give me one more time around this world. Stoke up the flames that burn out to my last dying day. Yeah, well, I ain't done. I've got so much left to say. Yeah, well, I wasn't done. I had so much left to say. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found. Was blind, but now I see. Through many dangers, toils, and snares, I have already come.